Hello, welcome to the USS Midwatch. My name is Rafael Guzman.
And I'm Brandon Taylor.
I'm Perry Solomon.
Sir, we appreciate you joining us today. A few questions for you is, when did you join the Navy and how old were you?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I do want to just say real quick before we get started that a lot of the things we're going to discuss today, these are just my personal views. None of them reflect upon actual guidance or information that the United States Navy is putting out or Department of Defense. These are just my personal experiences that I've had, and I appreciate you guys letting me be a part of that. If you ever want to reach out to me again, feel free. I know I've served with you guys for multiple years now, so thank you also for providing me the questions ahead of time, because we know how that can be,
Yes,
catch me off guard or anything like that. And if you have any random questions you want to add in here, chime in. We'll see how it goes.
Yes, sir.
So I guess to answer your first question, then I joined the Navy when I was 18 years old and 4 days. So 9 days after I graduated high school, when everybody else was freaking out, trying to guess where they're going to college, trying to figure out what life was going to look like after high school, I was in the delayed entry program all the way through my senior year and was studying to go to boot camp. And 9 days after graduation, I'm on a plane flight to Great Lakes, on a bus, looking at the pearly gates of the United States Navy and all that the Navy had to offer.
How many years have you been in so far?
Yeah, so now at this point, I've been in for 19 years. My 19-year point will be just right around the corner in a couple weeks. And while I was enlisted, if you want to count my time in college, while I was still, active duty, military through Seaman to Admiral program, then I will have done 8 years as enlisted, and I'm right around the 11-year point right now as an officer.
Sir, what rate were you prior to becoming an officer, and how was the A school for that?
Yeah, so I was in a nuclear field A school, so I was an electrician's mate in the Navy as an enlisted member. Ooh. And thanks, appreciate that. But there's three rates in the nuclear field that you have to pick from, and the way that gets decided is in boot camp. Somebody comes and talks to a group of people, everybody who's going to be a nuke, and kind of explains what the three rates are going to feel like and what they're going to be and what the jobs entail. And I think I related to what they put out as the electrician more than any of the other rates that they had to offer. And you got to pick them in order, 1, 2, 3. I got my number one pick, so electrician's mate. And I'm glad I did it. I think that it set me up for, life, even right now as a family. I am installing electrical circuits in my house, and my wife is shocked all the time of how do I know how to do that. And I tell her nuclear field A school, even though we didn't do wiring and stuff like that necessarily, but I think that I had the skill set, and they taught me the skill set to set me up better than what I did in any other field. Now that being said, in college I actually studied to be a mechanical engineer, and the reason why I did that was I wanted to diversify my skill set. So I learned electrical, and then I wanted to, study mechanical engineering, and I thought that would benefit me in the Navy in the future to come.
So why did you decide to be an officer?
Yeah, so really my thought on being an officer was, hey, I want to get leadership skills. I want to leave a bigger mark on the Navy. I kept looking towards what was the next adventure that I was going to choose and what that was going to look like. And I related a lot to seeing movies of a commander commanding a submarine, or that big moment where somebody gets to make that decision and is the person on the line that says, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and let's round the troops up. I could have done a lot of that as an enlisted member, but I think that I related to the officer side of it, of wanting to know what bigger picture the Navy had, what the bigger side tactics were involved. And so, I couldn't say no when that offer came to the table. It had been something that I wanted to do from the time I joined the Navy. My father always pushed me that direction. And so when I had that opportunity in my hand to say, hey, this is it right now, sign on here, go through the program to say, put an application in for Seaman to Admiral, do you think you could do it? And I'm glad the Navy selected me. I'm glad I'm here now and all the stuff that I've learned.
How would you describe your current job, what you do right now, to someone who has no clue anything about Navy, submarines, any of that?
Yeah, so I guess let me go back a little bit in time, because I think that this is important to say, how you're molded as a junior sailor and coming up in the ranks. And this is kind of going to lead into like why I make the decisions that I make now. So So in A school, we're all young. Most of my class were 18, 19, 20 years old in the Navy, and it's our first time out on our own. Some guys been through college and are coming back, to say, hey, we're going to get a fresh start on life. But for me and the core group of my guys that I was with, we were all first time out of the house. And so the camaraderie that you form then in A school and power school and prototype, I think sticks with you. The leaders that are in charge of you then when you're young, they make an impression on you in life, and they kind of form the decisions and how you're going to make those decisions in life. And so kind of just to give you a little grasp of like what A school, power school, prototype, I just want to go back to that a little bit. So it is like drinking water out of a fire hose is the way they describe it. And I think that's the day one when you get there and you're out of boot camp and you feel good. But they tell you that, hey, it's going to be coming at you fast. There's a lot of knowledge that you got to learn. And you got to find some way to de-stress in life because you're studying a lot and you're taking in a lot of information. So, on the weekends, we would always try to go out and do something, whether that was going to downtown Charleston, going to, a concert or a sporting event of some kind. There's local sports in the area there. Me and another group of another friend of mine, there was a local church that was there. We would go to church on Sundays and, we'd de-stress and we'd kind of get a good positive message about how we can incorporate, these better values into our lives. And so I appreciated that. I actually volunteered in a church. I'd feel a little convicted. I'd go buy Krispy Kreme donuts and bring them back to the guys afterwards, and hook up the class and try to give them some positive thought of like, hey, there's more to life here than just nuclear power school and what we do on a daily basis. And so, that being said, it kind of all led up to this point of, how are you going to help a junior sailor when they might be at the lowest point ever, right? Like, life is going to be hard. Life's going to have challenges. And what you do in the Navy or with any job, this is not it. This is not like the end all be all of who you are and what makes you you. People and personal relationships is what really matters at the end of the day because we're not just robots and we're not computers. So I think all of that being said, here I am now serving on a boat as an officer, and I'm speaking to people and making decisions that impact their lives. So I told you I'm long-winded. I told you that was going to happen. And I know your question. I know what your question was, is what do I do on a daily basis? So what does a navigator look? That's my position right now on the submarine. What does that person do on a boat? Well, I do assist in creating navigational plans for the submarine. I'm not the one that's deciding where the water space is for the submarine and where we're going to go. That's given to us from commands that are above us, and they're deconflicting a lot of the places that we go. But once we get those orders, then I basically provide that plan to the captain, and I say, Captain, here's where our water space is. This is our limitation that we have at these various times, and we put that into navigational planning tools to provide to the watch teams to be able to say, here's where you got to go time distance wise, and figure out as a ship how to get there from point A to point B. But that's not always an easy task. There is a lot involved with making a ship go. There's multiple departments that you have to deconflict operations with. And so nowadays, that's probably my number one thing is deconflicting major maintenance items, major operations, and ships movements to have to put us in the right spot at the right time to set the watch teams up for success. And ultimately, we've been able to do that successfully for years and years. Nuclear power's been on ships for now 70 years that we've been doing nuclear power successfully around the world. So I'm just glad that I'm able to be a part of that and continue the strong legacy.
So what boats have you been on?
So now this is my second boat. So 19 years. I know that might seem crazy to say 2 submarines in 19 years, which I know is another one of your questions in here too. So, how does a guy do 19 years in the submarine force and only serve on 2 submarines? Well, I spent a lot of time in a trading command. That's another one of those foundational questions. How did you get to this point? And it is because I spent years at the prototype. I was a staff instructor at the prototype when I was enlisted. I stayed and was a staff instructor at the prototype as an officer. And so I think when I finally made it to the fleet, which was at my 10.5-year point, I came with a depth of knowledge of what, in my mind, I always told people this is the gold standard, which is Navy nuclear power is the gold standard across the board of how to do watchstanding, how to have integrity, how to do maintenance. And so, yeah, my first submarine was the USS Alaska. Back in 2015, I finally made it to a boat. Bushy-tailed, green thumb, just ready to see the world. And it was an SSBN. And so, as an SSBN, not necessarily we're not seeing the world all the time, but we are seeing the world through a different lens. And so I did 3 years. I like to say it was the most operationally strong schedule of any SSBN that was out there. So I had 36% of my time on that submarine was spent at sea, which just goes to show you kind of like the schedule that an SSBN goes through with multiple crews. And I did that job for 3 years and have now been on my second boat now for just at the 3-year point right now.
So I guess this answers part of the next question is how many shore tours, what shore tours have you done? Obviously you spent a lot of time in a training command, but outside of that, you said your first time in the fleet was as an officer. So from there, what shore duties have you done? Yeah,
so the shore tour kind of length of time of what the seashore rotation looks like for an officer is a little bit different than enlisted, in that you do 3 years on the submarine as a junior officer, and then you either go to a 2-year or a 3-year shore tour as an officer. It just depends on what you do. Most of them are 2 years. And so in between my junior officer tour and my department head tour, I went to the Submarine Group 10 headquarters, which is still here in Kings Bay, Georgia, and was able to serve under 3 different admirals as the flag aide, which was an amazing opportunity. Looking back on my career, doing shore tours at a nuclear prototype, teaching the next generation of nuclear operators, I would say, this was something I never thought I would do. I never thought I would be traveling the world with an admiral. Never even knew what does that mean to be a flag aide. Some people joke and they say, hey, you're going to make a lot of coffee, you're going to open a lot of doors and close a lot of doors behind them and make sure things are set up. And I mean, there is that side of the job, but I think more importantly, what you learn is once again, what really matters in life, because you hear it from the people who are making the decisions themselves. You hear the closed doors conversations of what really matters in life, and how those people that are making those decisions really care about the people, and they do. And I think that that's important to bring that back to the fleet. So I'm glad I got that opportunity to see what that was like, to see how those decisions are made and how we can improve the quality of life of sailors.
So why did it take you so long to get your fish?
That's the question that everybody's made fun of me for years about, is that it took me so long to get qualified in submarines or any sort of qualification like that. But I always like to say that, hey, I qualified senior and rate in the required amount of time that the Navy set for me at the nuclear prototype. But like I said, I was at a prototype. As a junior enlisted guy, I just could not qualify in submarines until I made it out to the fleet. So refer to my previous statement where it took me 10.5 years to make it to the fleet. And then when that occurred, then it took me 12 months. I think I qualified right at my 12-month point after making it to the submarine. And I was proud of everything that I had accomplished before that led me up to that point. And what I said when I got my fish still stands true today, which is you're never done qualifying. You're never done helping people. And all that pin, that warfare device on your chest means for you is, 1, that you know how to fight the ship. 2, that you can stand up for your shipmates who are going to be in need, because you're going to need to help somebody at some point. But 3 is that you have the ability to learn whatever that is in life. And so whether that's submarining, something on the outside world, whatever that looks like, because I've been in since I was 18 years old. I don't know what the life's going to hold for me, but I have the ability to learn. I have the ability to help out shipmates that I'm going through and making life better for everybody around me.
Well, point this out. His claim to fame was, I qualified senior and rate in prototype.
That's important. Hey, for those of you who served the prototype, you know what that means. So
we'll go on forward with the question, sir. At your discretion, obviously. Any good sea stories you would like to share with us at this time?
Okay, yeah. So sea stories, I like to say this comment. Sea stories are better left told in A school. All right. So for those of you who are looking out there and you're thinking about serving your Navy in whatever capacity that is, just know, hey, there's some excellent sea stories that exist that are out there, either underway or in A school. Those are great places. But I do have some stories that I did write down that I think I just never imagined that this was going to happen, in life. So a lot of my stories or a lot of things that happen, they happen, on the bridge of a submarine, maybe with or without a cigar in the submarine, on the bridge of a submarine. And so the bridge, for those who don't know, is when you're surfaced and you man the sail, which is, climbing up about a 40-ish foot ladder or so that takes you to the bridge. And you will be up there for hours as the officer of the deck with maybe sometimes only you and the lookout. And a lot of good things happen up there, a lot of good conversations where you have the ability to make decisions in lieu of where the captain's standing right next to you to be able to say, I'm going to drive the ship this way. And obviously the captain hears your orders or the duty officer, the CDO will hear your orders that you give. But ultimately, it's you. It's you up there. And so there was a time where we had it was nighttime, dark skies all around, stars illuminating the night, and we're driving the ship, and I think we're going inbound, and my lookout looks behind us and says, hey, sir, I think I see an explosion on the horizon. It looks like a mushroom cloud on the horizon. And I turn around and I look, and for a split second I did. I no joke thought that there was an atomic bomb going off on the horizon because it was the most glowing orange-red silhouette of something. I took my binoculars out even and looked and still thought in that moment that I'm seeing an explosion. And it turns out that, the wheels started turning, and I said, no, actually, that's the moon. That's the moon on the horizon, because I have never seen the moon rise on the horizon. I have seen the moon over trees. I've seen the moon up, high in the sky, and it looks small. But that, every now and then you can say, hey, the moon looks really large today. It's because it's lower on the horizon, and as it goes through more layers of the atmosphere, it looks larger because it's distorted. It was right on the horizon, and it looked like a bomb going off. And I'm really glad and thankful that I didn't listen to the lookout right away and call down to the control room and say there's a bomb going off. I thought we were going into World War III. And so, what a way to look stupid as the first time I'm manning the bridge that I say there's a bomb going off on the horizon. So there's one for you. But yeah, so and you're going to get that in life. You are serving with guys, and we don't know what this stuff is. We're young guys, and people will say what they think. Say what's on their mind. Another time, in the bridge, and this was daytime now, but I look out and I'm like, why are there so many birds flying around on the ocean? Like, I'm like way out here. Why do I see so many birds? And they're like a foot above the water, flying around. And so I told my lookout, I was like, hey, you see all these birds around us? Like, this is pretty crazy right now. And man, somebody's going fast over there. And so I see these birds. I'm looking at them, and the lookout says, no, sir, those are flying fish. And I'm like, flying fish? Like, you're joking with me. Like, you're not going to pull one. Like, I'm from Missouri, man. You're going to have to show me that sort of thing. And I don't believe you. That's some prehistoric thing that does not exist in life, a flying fish. And he's like, no, sir, that's real. It's a flying fish. They do exist. And I'm like, no. I did not believe him. I had to get somebody else up there to say, hey, this is real. There's flying fish out here in the Atlantic Ocean. And so, sure enough, I'm looking closer. These things are jumping straight out of the water, flying 50 to 60 yards, skimming across the surface, and then diving back down, escaping, whoever knows, a dolphin, a shark, a whale that's down there. And I got home, I looked it up, and you can do it, and it's real. These things have wings. They do look like prehistoric animals. I don't know how many they're out there. But every now and then you will see flying fish on the water, and you'll see a lot of things out there that most people will never have the opportunity to see staying on land.
What's the best CO you ever worked with?
Yeah, so you're not going to get me on that one. You're not going to get me to say it. But I will tell you, hey, every CO that I've worked for has been awesome in their own rights. And they didn't get there for any reason, other than all of their accolades that they had that led them to that mark. We have a selection process to get them to be that level. What I will say, though, is, and it doesn't matter, CO, a chief petty officer, even the civilians that I've worked for in leadership positions, that you can take the good, the bad, and the ugly from all of them. And you can say to yourself and just pocket it away and say, hey, that was awesome what that guy did. Or the opposite and say, I don't know why he did that or made that decision, and maybe there was other things that were going involved, but I don't know if I want to be on that side of it or the way he presented that when I get to that spot. And ultimately, there are some people that will run from those things when they get faced with bad things that happen, and other people that say, I want to stay here so that I can be the change and I can be somebody different in that position. So that's where I'm at right now, is I have taken something from everybody that I've served with, and here I am.
What's kind of like, give us a round up, round down, don't tell us which, approximately longest amount of time you've ever been at sea?
Yeah, so, one, it's acceptable. Like, once your boat pulls in, once you go out to sea, these actually, those dates become unclassified. They know, spies or whoever else is out there knows when we left, when you get back. So those things do become unclassified. But I have spent over 100 days underway on an SSBN, and so, that's not common, to say the least. It does happen, and it just depends on what events are occurring around the world. In this case, I had multiple extensions that led to an over 100-day patrol, over Thanksgiving, over Christmas, over New Year's, when I thought I was going to be home with my family for Christmas and New Year's. And we had plans to go places and do things and celebrate that with the family. And luckily, we were in a spot where I was able to communicate with the family and say, hey, you might want to make other plans, because I may not be making it home when you thought I was going to make it home. But that's part of the flex that we have in the military. That's part of the things that we have to work with. And when we did get home, guess what? We still celebrated Christmas. We still did our own New Year's party, and I made it exciting for the family. So, also, just something else to keep in mind, there are times when you don't communicate. And I've spent over 50, I think I spent 55 days one time out of communications with the family, and I couldn't hear anything from them, and I didn't send anything off to my family. So, and that was a little, unannounced as well. And they had to be able to deal with not hearing from Dad, and my wife not being able to get her answers that she needed for stuff that might have been breaking at the house. I've had air conditioners break. I've had washers and dryers break. The refrigerator's broken. The dishwasher doesn't work. The tires, the battery in the car. And you know what? I will say my wife has stepped up to the plate, and she has fixed all of those things. She's been able to do all of those things, and flawlessly, Don't complain when you get home and you have 4 new tires on the car. Hey, those are the best tires I ever saw, And hey, does the car run? You got this battery changed. Some of it, she'd look them up on YouTube, did it herself, or call a neighbor over and have the neighbor come help her out. So, or my wife's been resilient and able to flex in situ. So there we are.
What's your favorite boat meal?
Okay. All right. This is a good one. I like this question. One, for those of you who serve with me, I like to eat. I know maybe skinny guy, I got it, but I have gained weight. You'll see the boot camp photos in here if you're going to post boot camp photos. I think I weighed 150 pounds when I went to boot camp, and I weighed 165 pounds when I left boot camp. A lot of people lost weight. I gained weight because I ate food and worked out all the time in boot camp, and it was awesome. And so getting on the boat, I do the same thing. I like to eat the food. Sometimes we call it 3-mealing, when you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And there are many days where I 3-meal on that submarine, and the guys are wondering, why are you here? Well, it's because I don't like to miss opportunities to talk with guys. And so I go to the meals because that's where the camaraderie happens. So what foods do I like? Well, I like pizza and wings night, but I would prefer the wings. If you're going to have pizza and wings, it's called Pizza Wings Movie Night for a reason. It's because there's supposed to be wings there. And so I always tell the CHOP, who's our supply officer, I tell him, you make sure you have wings when you have Pizza Wings Movie Night. That is a requirement. The crew wants that. And so I love wings. I like, all the different sauces that they add in them. make, a spicy sriracha sauce. That's great. Things like that. Love wings. Other meals I like, Thanksgiving dinner. I love to have Thanksgiving dinner. And for those of you who served on submarines, Thanksgiving doesn't just happen on Thanksgiving. You can have Thanksgiving whenever.
Every Thursday.
So, hey, Thanksgiving meal is a great one that I love to have. Lobster and steak. Love to have lobster and steak. Sometimes we reserve that for the halfway night party.
Or extensions.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the bad meal.
Yeah.
That's when you know the extension's happening.
Lobster's great. Big king crab legs come out. And so, sometimes you get that buttery lobster juice and sauce, and it gets up in your beard, and you're smelling that the entire watch that you have, and it's kind of gross. But you know what? Nothing beats a lobster and steak night on a submarine underway, especially if Chiefs quarters are making the steaks. So I'll tell you, the Chiefs can make damn good steak.
Hey, we don't have beards on submarines.
Yeah. I'm talking about before that. Been serving this country for 19 years. Come on now. So some of us remember the times where we did.
I like Taco Tuesday. Moving on.
Yep.
Wait. There are a couple more I want to mention because these are specific. And the good thing about submarining, I have had different meals on this boat than I had on my previous boat, and it's because it's all what the cooks, they're culinary specialists, right? What they are able to create. And so we have this chief right now on the boat that makes an amazing corn chowder. Shout out for that. I love corn chowder. Never had it on my first boat, and will have that here. And bread pudding is another one. Never had bread pudding on my first boat. They make a really good bread pudding. And so I get home, and I'm like, hey, let's look up how to make bread pudding, because I want to have that. Mix that with some ice cream. I'm set, man. It's good food. So
Didn't you make that one of the parties?
What?
You made bread pudding at one of the
No,
parties.
it was banana pudding.
Banana pudding, yeah.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Yeah, slap your mama banana pudding. I can do that. So
Well, Ethan.
yeah.
All right, so we know sometimes, stuff happens, stuff goes wrong. We typically critique those things sometimes, right?
Yes.
Have you had a critique where you've actually learned something like new, something you actually didn't know before?
Yeah, I think that's the goal with every critique that you do, right? You don't want to sit in a room and talk about something bad that happened. So for those of you who don't know what a critique is, right? Something happens that goes wrong. Maintenance item was done incorrectly. Somebody had a procedural violation, and it puts the ship at risk or personnel at risk, right? And so you sit in a room and you talk about it. You want to critique that and find lessons learned. You don't want to sit there while you're in the critique and say, what have I actually learned here? So the goal is you learn something out of every single critique that you come out of. So if you're asking me what have I learned out of critiques, there's a lot of things that I've learned in critiques. Believe it or not, I was only a part of 3 critiques in my first probably 17 years in the Navy. Personally a part of 3.
Only 3,
And-
sir?
Yeah, and that's kind of rare, maybe, but in the last 3 years, I've been a part of 19 critiques that I had to do, right? And so, and I think a little bit of that is because with more responsibility that you get, and the longer you're staying in the Navy, that you're going to see more and do more and be a part of. And so you're also how did we get here and how do we fix it? So one of the captains I served with one time told me something that stuck with me, which is when you're sitting in a critique, there's only 2 main causes of why this occurred. And it's a lack of will or a lack of skill.
Who you got, Captain Perez?
Yeah, that's what you're looking for, right? And so you got to find that and say, what was the event that occurred? Was it a lack of will, meaning that this is a personal and a personnel problem, or is this a lack of skill where I need to train this person better to get to the point where I need him to be? And so that's where I sit in the critique and I think about those things and I say, is this lack of will, lack of skill? I can teach lack of skill. I can get you to speed up to where you need to be. A lack of will, that's you. And I got to find that inner drive that you have to say, how do we make you want to do good and want to be better? And so that's the goal of a leader, is find that event and then say, where are we driving to? All the other stuff is all the, the little widgets and gizmos that you try to tricks to write this piece of paper up and say, how do we get better? But those are 2 fundamental features in there.
So what advice would you give a brand new sailor that just joined the Navy?
Yeah, so a couple things to keep in mind. One, I'd say set short-term goals, right? You're, young, 18, 19, 20 years old. Set some short-term goals. What do you want to get out of this patrol? What do you want to get out of this deployment? What do you want to get out of this tour? And just look that far out for right now. And you might have a couple long-term goals that are there, but really set some short-term goals. And then secondly, I'd say qualify as much as possible and qualify as quickly as you can, right? The qualification process that you are provided when you show up to a boat, they're there for a reason, and it's to get you engaged with the crew. You will learn a lot quickly, but you will also meet a lot of people. And the more people you meet, the more interactions you have is going to set you up for success throughout your time on the boat. So I'd say qualify as much as you can. Another one, do not burn bridges. You are going to meet people again. That person might be on your boat right now for an inspection. Chances are, you stay in the Navy, you're going to see that person again. Don't burn bridges. You're going to a trainer, don't burn bridges with the staff members that are there. You're going to serve with those people again. And then lastly, I'd say, hey, there's hope and there's light at the end of the tunnel. That light that you see at the end of the tunnel is not always a train that's coming smack dab, straight at you. Even though we do joke about that sometimes, that is actually the pinnacle of where you're trying to achieve. You're trying to get to this, nirvana in the submarine force of fully qualified so that you can help the next generation of people, right? And you're not going to be able to help as many people if you just sit on the sidelines, right? You got to play the game. So you get in there and you do as much as you can and you push as much as you can.
If you could change one thing about today's Navy, if you will, that could potentially benefit the future sailors that are coming in,
Yeah.
what would that one thing be?
Yeah, I'd say more money, right? More money is what you need. No, I'm just
I can
joking.
get behind that one, actually.
I'm joking. I think a lot of people would love to get paid more money. But that's kind of my joke answer, and it's tongue in cheek, which I do think would benefit a lot of people if you're asking for the most benefit. But in reality, what you also want to do is you want to try to promote keeping top talent. That's what we got to work on, is keeping people who are the top of what they do, right? We want to maintain that in the Navy because that's the next generation of leaders, and I don't want those guys to get out. Even though it's great that I developed that skill set, right, and sent them on their way and I'm bettering the world, I want them to stay Navy. Right? I want that person to serve alongside me on my next patrol or my next submarine that I serve on or my next shore duty command. I invested that into that person, and I want to see that person succeed in the Navy. So more top talent, and then finally is promoting and developing leadership skills. And you can do leadership skills from the youngest of sailors to the most senior of sailors. You don't ever stop gaining those leadership skills. So I think those three things is what I would pursue.
What's the most trouble you've ever been in that you're willing to share?
You're not gonna get me to say that. Most trouble I've been on, man. Okay, so here's what I will say in the context of the room that we're in right now. Also, a lot of good stories on the submarine that I'll say. I'll refer back to that other question that I had. But hey, I think thinking about this question, my XO would probably tell you keeping the nav in line of where he's got to be and when he's got to be there. Right? He will tell you there's a couple people he's got to watch, and when he's going up getting ready for a meeting, and it's where's the nav at, and why is the nav not at the meeting right now? So that's probably what I'm doing. What he might not realize, and what I think that I'm doing, is I'm setting up a lot of things all the time to get to that meeting. I am making sure people are there. I'm running around the boat, pulling people into the meeting. Get in here, get this presentation ready, get this screen aligned to some lineup, get the piece of paper ready, the notes, who's taking notes. And so it causes me to be a little flustered at the beginning of a meeting sometimes, and I might be running a little late. So, that being said, hey, work on that skill set of being ready when you need to be ready. That's just something you got to continuously work on.
So what's the biggest difference that you've noticed since the time you've joined to now? What's the biggest thing that's changed?
Technology. I would say the technology that we have right now, vastly different, both on the ship and also personnel related. We didn't have cell phones that everybody was on all the time. Everybody's more independent now than we were 20 years ago when I joined. And so think back to A School, Power School, Prototype, where I was there, and there was less distractions on a personal level. And so now you're fighting for that. You're fighting for that camaraderie. You're fighting for that everybody come out to cruise mess, everybody hang out on a weekend, right? Because everybody can do their own thing now, and you can live your own world in your tiny little bubble. And we're already in a bubble on a submarine. And that's one benefit that we have when we get underway. I can just completely disconnect from the world. You don't have a lot of the connections that you have when you're in port.
So will there be a COEX Tour?
I'm going to keep my options open. That's where I'm at right now. I know that a lot of people are pushing. Hey, you don't know what the future holds, and so I'm going to give you my very political answer, and that's what I'm going to say. But that being said, I have always looked forward to what the future holds, and I'm a positive person in most things that I have, and so I like the vision of what that looks like.
So if you were to say there was one person who has had the biggest impact on you in your career, and they were to walk through this door right now, what would you say to them? Who are they, and what would you say to them?
Yeah, so I don't know if you get this answer too many times, but I thought about it a lot, and really the number one person, if you're thinking big picture in the Navy, who has impacted my career, and it's been my father. So, my dad was in the Navy, and he only did 2 years active and 4 years reserve, and I don't remember any of that because it was before I was even born. But growing up, my dad always told me about his time in the Navy and how much he loved it. And the one kicker that he always had was that he got out too soon. And he always told me, once you're in, stay in. Keep promoting. The Navy is a great organization of promoting from within. I have done that. I was enlisted and I became an officer. I got promoted from within. He kicks himself that he doesn't have that 20-year career under his belt. And here I am leading up to that point right now. And every step along the way, my dad said, what's next? What are you doing? What's the next tour you're taking? Did you get orders yet? What does that look like? Oh, you're moving to this place. You're moving to that place. That's awesome. He's been coaching me and pushing me all along the way. And I'm glad I have my dad. So if he walked through this door right now, I'd let him know that. Even the first day when I went to the detail or the recruiter in St. Charles, Missouri, looking at what I was going to do in the Navy, my dad was alongside of me saying, hey, that job looks really cool. I think he wants to do that job. And I'm looking at this thing like, what is this, nuclear power? And my dad goes, yeah, he wants to do that. That's what he wants to do. And I'm like, is that what I want to do, Dad? I don't know. Does that sound cool? He's like, Charleston, that's awesome. You want to do that job. And so he'll tell everybody this story of that first day, like it was yesterday. Even though in my mind I think it went a little differently, but I'm glad he pushed me. I'm glad I'm here today.
Can you explain that toilet story you told us a couple days ago?
Okay, first of all, it's not a toilet story.
Sounds like a toilet story, sir.
It's not a toilet story. It was a urinal.
Something about
right?
a
So
urinal.
urinal story.
Correction.
Either way, all right, it's a man's toilet.
Can you explain the urinal story you said a couple days ago?
Yeah, there you go. So there are going away speeches that you give. We allow people to talk. Hey, this is your last moment to talk to a command on your way out. How do you feel when I love those moments to be able to talk to people. So yeah, the urinal story. I will preface this with saying I incorrectly, and the weapons officer on our boat backed me up afterwards. I incorrectly said this was a metaphor, but actually it was a simile, and I need to tell you that. So shout out to the Weps. Thank you for backing me up on the fact that it's a simile. But I said that being on your tour on a submarine is like a trip to the urinal. Okay, and so what does that mean, right? Well, when you go to the submarine, right, you think, hey, this is going to be quick. I'm gonna get in, I'm gonna get out. It's going to be a fast tour. For officers, that might be 2 to 3 years long. That's not a long time. And so I'm just going to push through, and I'm gonna make this happen. when you show up to a urinal, it's a similar thing. Hey, that's convenient. And you look down at this urinal, and I'm sorry if this disgusts people out there. This is the way my brain works. But hey, you look down at the urinal, and you don't know what you're about to meet. You don't know what that's going to be like. And it turns out it's almost inevitable. Majority of the time when you walk up to the urinal, it's somebody else's stank that's in that urinal. It's somebody else's problems that they left over for you. But when you get there, those problems are now your problems, right? And you have to own that. You have got turned over that product, and it's yours. It's your mess now that you have to own. And so while you're doing your business there at this urinal, people pass by you, and they let you go about your business. Some people don't mind you. They just walk right by. That's cool. Some people pat you on the back. Hey, not needed.
Not necessary.
Not necessary at all to pat me on the back while I'm doing my business, but okay, welcome, sure, fine, why not? Other people may come while you're doing the urinal, and they inspect you. We have inspectors that watch us do urinalysis. Well, similar to a submarine, we have inspectors that come on the boat and watch me do my job. Also not really necessary, but hey, I appreciate the benefit to be able to show you the moment, right? And so that's a part of that process. And then also along the whole way, you, and I know this is just a simile, but you're putting a lot into this toilet right now, this urinal, right? And for some reason, I don't know the physics behind this, but that level never seems to go up at all. No matter how much you put into there, it's never overflowing. And it's like that on a submarine. Sometimes you're investing a lot into the submarine. You're putting a lot into this product, and it might not seem like it's ever enough. And so, that's an important part of the job that you're like, how do I convince myself that it is enough, even though it might not seem like it's enough at the time. And so this reminds me of what it was like when I joined the Navy, when I was told by my recruiter that, hey, the Navy it's not a job, it's an adventure, right? And so that word adventure, that means something, and it should mean something to you, because the root word of adventure is advent, and so that is Latin for the word adventus, which means the coming of. And so the coming of is like a coming of moment of celebration. So there's like the advent of summer would be the coming of summer. And what does that hold? We don't know, but it's celebratory. There's also Advent calendars, right? For, in December, you open up a little present every single day. It's the coming of Christ that is coming. So something that you're looking forward to. And your job in the Navy is not a job. And if you treat it as a job, you're not going to get a lot out of it. It is an adventure because nothing's ever the same every time you do it. And it is the coming of. If I invest into this adventure that I have in the Navy, hopefully I'm going to get a great product in the end. That's your goal. But what does that look like? It's what you put into it that actually matters. And so if you treat every single job or every adventure that you have in the Navy like that, then it will be a moment, it will be this pinnacle point of, I can't wait till this one thing occurs. And then what I said at the end of it was, hey, at the end of your adventure on the time on the submarine, just remind yourself in your mind, I'm going to make sure I flush a little bit longer next time so that I can leave a cleaner product for the next person and I don't leave my stank in there for them.
That's very understandable. So has anyone ever come up to you, stood next to you, and be like, "Hey, man, nice watch"?
Yeah, actually, I did have.
ADMC did.
At one of my very first urinalysis that I ever had to provide, I'll never forget this. It was a Master Chief Petty Officer, and then he led us all in power school to the head, and we had to provide for our country, right? That's what we always
on
say.
The back, say "Good for you."
And I'll never forget what he said. He said it to every single person that walked in there, and he said, "Quarter left face." Okay, and if you don't know what that means, it's you're turning a little bit his direction, right? And that's a pivotal moment in any young man's career, right? So
I would assume it's pivotal. You're turning partially left.
There you go.
All right, so we'll move on from that. So I understand you're going on throughout your career. You're getting closer to retirement every day. What are your future plans after you retire?
We'll defer to an answer that my first nav that I ever served with said to me, which is that's why I'm still in the Navy. A lot of us stay in the Navy because there's a little fear of what that might look like transitioning out of the Navy. I have enjoyed everything I've done in the Navy, and so, career in the Navy, career outside the Navy, I'm just looking for that next adventure that I have on the forefront of wherever that might be. But that's why I'm still here right now, is because I have unfinished business to do. That's what I enjoy doing.
Sounds like an XOCO tour. All right. All right, yeah. So what do you like to do in your spare time? Tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah, so I spend a lot of time with my family. In my spare time, it's pretty much centered all around family. I have a wife, 4 kids at home. My oldest will be 20 this year, and my youngest is 8. So always finding new things for us to do, places to go, and the next adventure that whatever that holds. I do a lot of projects around the house. We actually bought our first home on this tour, and so if you don't find me on the submarine working, then I'm probably around my house installing something around the house, working in the yard, doing a lot of projects. There's a honey-do list that never seems to end, and I'm proud to be able to chop some of those things off as much as I can. Additionally, I also like to take in different trips around the country so I can show my kids the world, because that's one thing I didn't get to have when I was a kid growing up. We stayed, probably lower middle class family and didn't take a lot of vacations. And so I like to kind of show my kids, the other side of this great country that we have. So going to Orlando, Tampa, Daytona, Myrtle Beach, places like that. I like to take vacations when I can. And then additionally, sports. Go to a lot of sporting events. Go Jaguars. The Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp is probably a hot spot on my list. I've spent many birthday at the Jumbo Shrimp game. So, big Jacksonville sports guy right now.
So if we were to make a submarine movie today, USS Midwatch, starring Person X, who is that Person X that plays you as the navigator?
Yeah, I don't know. These are tough questions. Whether or not you would actually be able to make this happen, hey, it's out there for people. But I'd like to say, the guy that I relate to the most when I watch his movies is Matthew McConaughey. I think that person for me.
All right.
Yeah, so I like that. I think that person is inspirational in a lot of their movies. Appreciate that. Also, Tom Hanks is a fan of mine. I like Tom Hanks. So you could blend Tom Hanks and Matthew McConaughey into a submarine movie. That's the one I go see.
I really just like how you announce him as like a wrestler. Like,
The navigator. There's a rumor going around that you're a flat earther. Any truth to that?
I don't know where this rumor came up.
what?
I don't know where this rumor came up. There's a lot of conversations you have on a boat. People probably walked by at some point in time. What's really interesting, and I'm going to get to the answer here, but what's really interesting is that we had this conversation once before, and then I went home, and my wife actually was looking up and sending me articles about flat earth things, and I said, hold on, you got to be careful with where you're sending that to me. Like, this is going to get really weird if somebody sees this on the boat. And then you had this conversation with me again. So my one go-to answer would be for this is if I'm a flat earther, I'd say, have you ever played Risk before?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
yeah.
Flat Earth.
Flat Earth.
That's
Yeah,
pretty
okay.
flat Earth
Yeah.
to me, right? It looks like this. It is pretty flat. But yeah. So no, I'm not a flat earther. To put it out there, I'm a navigator on a submarine, and so I do believe that there is a way to get from point A to point B around the world, and you don't just do some magic time warp, some time space continuum between the North and South Pole or whatnot. There's great circle routes, so for a reason. There you go.
I think if there's anyone that can convince me that the Earth was flat, though, it would be you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Actually, that'll be the next one. Is how can I create the flat Earth model and convince other people? All right, I'll work on that.
So, sir, today we'd like you to select a submarine that you'd like to dedicate the podcast to for today.
Okay. Yep. So I brought some here for you today. So this is the. You probably tell. You might not be able to guess what this is, but it's actually a coin, and so it is a Scorpion coin. We're big into coins in the Navy, at least. In the submarine force, we trade coins. You collect coins. There's command coins. There's personal, divisions will make their own coin. There's chiefs' quarters coins. So this is this is a coin that I received at the 2018 Submarine Birthday Ball for the USS Scorpion. And we actually are a couple, really just about a week or so past the kind of the reunion or the moment when we lost USS Scorpion. So it was May 22nd. And the Scorpion was lost at sea. 99 sailors lost their lives on the Scorpion. So I would like to dedicate it to those family members that are still surviving and the memories that the personnel on the Scorpion left behind.
What's your favorite submarine movie?
Favorite submarine movie? Okay, so it's a little bit of a tie because, once again, I can't have a probably pretty straightforward answer on many things, but I will tie it. Crimson Tide, because SSBN officer and down Periscope. So I'll put it between those two, right? One, I love the humor of down Periscope. I think that it captures a lot of the times when I was first joining the Navy of like my thoughts of what the submarine force was going to be like. And then to get into the submarine force and get onto a ship and see that some of those things are actually a little real. There's some realism to there, and it's funny. And we have those funny moments on a submarine. And then Crimson Tide as well. I'll tie it for that one. I think the seriousness of that movie strikes a chord with me. Hunter Killer was exciting. It was an exciting movie. I was on the edge of my seat, and I appreciated that I had already been serving on a submarine when that movie came out. And I loved the reactions from people that watched it, and being able to get my family to go see it was pretty cool. So I'm excited for whatever the next movie is. I hope it's just as exciting as that.
Awesome, sir. As we're bringing this today's podcast to a close, are there any last words you'd like to say? Any last thoughts?
Yeah. So I got a few points here. What I think people can take out of this, whether you're in the Navy, the Army, Marine Corps, whatever you're going to do in the military, and this applies for outside of the military as well. I think there's two things you should strive to do as you go through life. You should try to remove two things from your life. Remove distractions and remove negativity. So what does that mean? So there's things that are preventing you from doing your main job and your main mission, and it's distracting you from that task at hand. You need to recognize that and remove that from your life and remove that from that task. And then remove negativity, right? Professional athletes don't go into a game thinking they're going to lose. They go to win, right? And that's what you should do in life. You should be working towards that goal, which is to excel and to succeed. You are going to win. You need to have a positive mind. You need to envision what that looks like. So remove negativity and remove distractions. And then two other things, you should try to foster a couple things in your life. And one, you should try to foster learning. And so you never stop learning, whether you are in elementary school or you are, 80 years old and you still have your family that you're taking care of and you're responsible for. There are still things that those people in their elderly age can still learn, right? And you see that throughout the existence of humanity, that civilizations who continue to learn continue to excel. So you should always develop that and foster that in your own life. And then secondly, on foster, you should foster communications. Most of your problems can probably be solved through effective communications, and those are important skill sets to learn. So foster learning and foster communications. And when somebody does communicate something with you effectively, you should tell them that, hey, that was excellent. I appreciate you coming and telling me those things. Not a lot of people do that, and that's important, right? So develop that in your own life, develop that in others. So that's what I would say. Other than that, thanks for having me, guys. I do appreciate this time and appreciate the moment to be able to remind myself what it's like to be on the bridge of a submarine, feeling the wind and the cigars and with the people that you love.
Well, thanks for joining us. It was a pleasure serving with you for the last 2 to 3 years on the Maryland. I appreciate all the stories that you came in during pre-watch. We stood a lot of underways together, and 80 days something and you're down and you just come in and you just come up with some random story that actually does hit. So just keep that up.
Yeah.
Just wanted to tell you that.
Well, yeah,
Sir,
thanks.
We
All right,
appreciate
thank
you, sir.
you.